Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Hello and welcome to SBI's weekly podcast. My name is George Delos Reyes and I'm joined by Matt Shears. We're with SBI, a sales and marketing consulting firm dedicated to helping you make your number. On today's show, we're going to discuss how internal and external strategic alignment is the key to increasing your probability of making your number. More on that later. Matt, back in 2011, CEB published some research that indicated that 57% of the buyer's journey was completed before a salesperson was actively involved with the process. Amazingly, there are still a few doubters out there. But most sales and marketing leaders don't dispute this fact. What's critical to understand is the fact this trend has accelerated, and today, that number has grown to 69%. With smartphones and immediate access to information 24/7, today's buyers rely less and less on the sales rep for information and more on their own recourses. Here's the bottom line. Buyers have changed. The way buyers make purchasing decisions today is not the same it was 3 to 5 years ago, and the trend continues to grow. In an attempt to address this trend and get ahead of it, we've seen companies focus on getting messages into the hands of early-stage buyers by launching various initiatives. Many sales and marketing leaders have invested in things such as persona research, the buyer journey mapping, content marketing, social selling, free trials, custom sales process, and mobile enablement, just to name a few. Though well-intentioned and well-founded, these initiatives are all one-offs and often not scalable. So many companies are essentially trading strategic plans for a series of tactics masquerading as a strategy. They think a series of well-executed tactics are going to be a substitute or equal to a well-defined strategy. Matt, when we surveyed executives on their definition of strategy, we got a lot of different answers, and many were confusing strategy for tactics. Yeah. And for the sake of our conversation, let's define strategy as doing the right things and tactics as doing things right.
George, I couldn't agree more. You know, what's interesting is this whole concept of the confusion between strategy and tactics. The thing to remember, all of this effort, and when we take a look at companies, is all in the context of being able to deliver the revenue growth number. So it isn't about defining these terms in academic sense so we can be academically right. It's about defining them in a sense that I can action them to go and deliver revenue growth. So last year's research, we reported that companies, they were moving back to creating functional strategies. So product, marketing, sales, and in an effort to stitch their compounding set of initiatives together. So this is progress. However, the problem started to develop, and that problem is that as these functional strategies reemerged, each revenue-facing function, which I mentioned, product, marketing, sales, had their own plan defined, and they did it in isolation. They weren't talking to each other. So while the performance of the individual function improved, they still had conflict with one another. So therein lies the challenge in this whole concept about being in and out of alignment. So recently, our CEO, Greg Alexander, caught up with Jeff White, longtime Cisco veteran, chief revenue officer at Extreme Networks. And in this interview, Jeff's knowledge on the importance of the functions to rally around a theme of cross-functional alignment in the context of delivering the quarter-over-quarter revenue number is really, really good. Let's take a listen to what Jeff had to say.
Let's talk a little bit about engaging with engineering and product. Sometimes sales leaders don't build the greatest relationship there. And as a result of that, engineering is building solutions based on what product management is telling them that they need. And at times, not always, but sometimes the voice of the customer is missing from that equation. You know, and the sales team who is engaging with the customer most often, you know, might add value to that conversation. So what's your approach to kind of reach across the aisle and have a dialogue with your product folks?
Before I decided to accept the role, I actually flew and met with Ed for Ed Carney for a couple of times and sat down with him, because really that dynamic and that relationship I knew was going to be really the key to my success going forward and the company's success going forward. And I think Ed really acknowledged out of the chute that there was not always complete alignment between what his teams were developing and what we were prioritizing in our go-to-market. So for me, getting that dynamic right really out of the gate was really important. It was about sitting down and listening to him and the dynamic that he brought, and me sharing a perspective and a hypothesis on how I view us growing the business and how I could view us working together in a collaborative way. And, I think it's really easy for companies to fall into the trap of being so focused on making the number and so near-term focus that you some of those muscles that you use to really understand the long-term dynamics of your business and your customers start to atrophy a bit. And I think there was some elements of that were clearly acknowledged, and I think Ed understood that and saw that. I think it made him very uncomfortable because he wasn't even 100% sure that what he was developing was exactly what was needed for the customers that we were developing it for.
Matt, what stands out for me listening to Jeff's comments is the emphasis on getting all the functions, marketing, product, sales, on the same page. He could have easily just focused on getting his sales house in order as a new sales leader. But what makes Jeff a great leader is he understands he cannot go it alone. He needs the support of his functional counterparts. He knew he needed all the wheels spinning, to use your metaphor, in the same direction. Mm-hmm. So it's clear to me, and I hope it's clear to our listeners as well, companies today can no longer afford to launch individual initiatives, hoping they'll somehow align themselves, stitch themselves together. Resources are wasted when functional leaders work in isolation. Just think of the dollars wasted on R&D for products the market doesn't value or isn't willing to pay a premium for. We need a product leader spending time getting direct feedback from his sales counterpart. So Jeff White commented on the importance of alignment in the same interview. So let's see what he had to say on that matter.
For me, it was philosophical alignment really kind of coming out of the gate and saying, this is what we've got to go do. This is the dynamics of, how we have to change the internal dialogue and discussion. And, this is where we have to stand up and show that as leaders we're in alignment and that there's bidirectional commitment to each other here around making this successful. And I think that's the dynamic, for me, certainly early on, and I have been able to develop that relationship based on trust. There's mutual respect there. I understand, very clearly what I've got to go do in terms of leading that conversation with our customers and our partners, and then feeding that back into the organization, help prioritize, where we focus our resources. Mm-hmm. And, ultimately, I believe that will be the key to our success going forward.
So after listening to Jeff, what should be clear to us all is the only way to systematize, and I stress the word systematize, revenue growth is through strategic alignment. So Matt, we've used the term strategic alignment a few times today, but what exactly do we mean by the term strategic alignment?
Yeah, well, it's surprising, George, and if I was a person first hearing it, it sounds academic, and it doesn't sound like something I can go out and implement tomorrow. That's going to help me sell more stuff. And at the end of the day, many of our viewers, they want to make their number, and they want to do it quarter over quarter.
It's all about selling more stuff, huh?
Yeah. So let's make sure in the context of that we get this definition. The reason we found that the average business leader struggles to define this is that they confuse tactical execution with strategic alignment. Others claim it has something to do with, having a good working relationship with my peers, which it does not. So simply defined, strategy is about doing the right things that drive profitable growth. Tactics is about doing those right things really well. So strategic alignment then begins, if you think about this whole connection point, it begins with a clear understanding of the corporate objectives, followed by the grasp of the interdependencies between each of the various functional strategies. This is how you internally get aligned. Corporate to product, product to marketing, marketing to sales, and sales to talent.
As you're speaking, what really strikes me is, you can have a marketing leader, you can have a sales leader who says, hey, I am executing flawlessly. right? I'm running great campaigns, look at my click-through rates, all these things. Look how many downloads I'm getting. Yeah. Sales is saying, hey, I'm out there, I'm penetrating some of the accounts I want to get to, but, that cross-functional alignment is key. It really is.
No doubt. But George, here's the thing. Internal alignment alone isn't going to cut it. So only by linking the internal strategies, to your point, on external market conditions, can a company truly achieve full strategic alignment. And the best companies are both internally and externally aligned. Based on our research for the 2016 How to Make Your Number research report, only 9% of companies are achieving full strategic alignment.
Only 9%. Wow. That's a very compelling stat, Matt. Unfortunately, we need to take a commercial break. But when we return, Matt and I will discuss the impact strategic alignment has on your cost to acquire a customer and the lifetime value of those customers. Don't go away.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI Magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back. I'm George Delos Reyes, and joining me is my fellow SBR, Matt Shares. And we've been discussing today how to increase the probability of making your number through strategic alignment. And in our last segment, Matt and I highlighted the importance of internal cross-functional alignment. And by that, we mean your internal functions must be aligned to one another, singing from the same hymnal. There is a focus and concerted effort on the part of each functional leader to get and stay in alignment. But that's just one side of the coin, Matt. The other side is ensuring that as a whole, your organization is aligned to the external marketplace as well. It's one thing to be on the same page as your sales, marketing, and product counterparts, but it's another to be aligned to the marketplace where changes in the market, customer accounts, buyer actions, etc., are captured and leveraged in real time. Brian Walker, CEO of Herman Miller, discussed the importance of alignment to the market in a recent conversation with our CEO, Greg Alexander. And in their dialogue, Brian stated, and I'm going to read his quote directly, "You have to have a good understanding of what is the situation analysis, i.e., what are the drivers of the marketplace? What are the risks that you faced to do that? What are the key goals and objectives? What are the talent you need to do it? And what are the priorities you need to get it done? Then, what are the investments you need? I think if you can keep those elements in front of you, and if you force yourself to the discipline of having to get it to one page, you get clearer and clearer in your own ability to articulate about it." For Brian, the market was a major input into his corporate strategy, and those of his functional leaders as well. It shaped the allocation of his people, time, and money. That is strategic alignment to the marketplace. And as Matt mentioned in the last segment, only 9% of companies achieve this level of full strategic alignment. And our research shows that these companies are 4 times more likely to hit their growth goals.
Yeah, I mean, George, there are 3 key metrics that are impacted by strategic alignment. Probability of making your number, your customer acquisition cost, and your customer lifetime value. In the 2016 research report, we found that companies in full strategic alignment are significantly outperforming their peers. And this 9% you spoke about, those that have this high probability, they're able to reduce their acquisition costs to the point where they free up dollars and they can reallocate those dollars somewhere else. So that's why a listener or viewer might care. The lifetime value, getting extended and continuing to have long lifetime value, well, once again, if I'm not losing customers, I'm generating more profit, I'm able to reallocate, we're hitting our number. Most importantly, from a revenue growth perspective, predictable. I'm predictable. I make the number quarter over quarter, year over year. So the goal here, and the goal should be, these improvements are the difference between making it once. Anybody can make it once.
That's right.
And making it all the time.
I mean, there's a big difference, as you mentioned. One thing's to hit your number one quarter, one's hit even multiple quarters, but year over year, like some of these level 5 companies do, is where you want to be at. A 30% reduction in customer acquisition costs.
Correct.
And a 26% improvement in customer lifetime value. I mean, those are significant improvements, Matt.
Yeah.
And there's no executive, no CEO listening today that would not want to see those types of numbers. But seriously, how does strategic alignment have such a dramatic impact on customer acquisition costs and customer lifetime value? Can you give us some examples that bring this to life to make this real for the listeners?
Yeah. So the example that Brian Walker gave about how buying had changed at Herman Miller and the way they were servicing those buyers, well, being able to now reallocate, a segment of the market to an inside sales channel that was not as expensive as an outside sales channel, that could make more calls, and that adopted a selling motion, if you will, that was more applicable to those buyers and where they were, allowed them to take the cost to serve that market and reduce it. So my acquisition cost has now dropped. With those dollars, I now have a pool of money. I can choose to stick it in the bank. I can choose to invest in new products. I can choose to hire new people, so on and so forth. So the impact in customer acquisition costs to us and to those folks who are delivering is everything.
Yeah. How about CLTV?
Well, sort of think about it through the other end of the spectrum. The best way to impact switching costs and customers leaving you is to ensure that you're doing more for those customers, right? Because the more I'm doing for you, the harder it is for you to go to the bad guys, otherwise known as the competitors.
Yeah.
So by being able to increase customer lifetime value and extend that, I improve my profitability, right? You think about the job satisfaction of your people when you have that level of lifetime value. You have loyal customers. So the cascading impact of having long customer lifetime value, the cost to acquire a customer, that's one of the most expensive things you do.
Yeah, and that ratio is critical, right?
No doubt.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
I would say, Matt, that most of our listeners today probably struggle to know or even measure what their customer acquisition costs. And some may even, not know how to go about starting the process of learning or what that is and measuring that on an ongoing basis. If I'm a listener today, how would you recommend we start measuring CAC?
Yeah, so for those of you that are listening, I would turn over a piece of paper and I would use something called activity-based costing. And this is very basic. That's kind of a fancy title, but it's super basic. And
It does sound fancy, though.
Yeah. All you really want to do is take a look at the number of activities required to sell a new customer. So George, for example, let's say that I sign a contract and it's $100,000. And we take a look at the number of sales calls that took. Let's say it was 10 sales calls. Well, how long does each sales call take? Let's say it's an hour. But I've got prep time. I've got post-call time. So maybe I'm, 3 hours, for every interaction. Well, 3 times 10 is 30. Maybe there's some sales engineer or pre-sales help. I take those number of hours. Take a look at the basic hourly rate that an employee would work, by dividing the number of hours they work in a year by what they get paid. And I have a version 0.5 that I just scratched out that I can use to say the cost to acquire that $100,000 customer was $6,275.
There's 2 things I love about the activity-based costing model that you just described. One, it's bottoms up, right? Mm-hmm. It's really starting at the interactions it takes to actually move a customer along the continuum to purchase, right? But secondly, what strikes me about the model that you're describing is you really need to know how many touches it requires, right?
Correct.
You need to have discipline in your sales process, right? Of
Correct.
when a sales rep is going in, what he's doing in each stage of the sales process, when a SME is coming in, how often he comes in. You need to know those inputs, because if you don't know those inputs, it's hard for you to do an activity-based cost model.
What's a SME?
Subject matter expert. Another consulting term. Sorry about that.
I just caught George Speedy with his fancy jargon, but as a man of the street,
I just want to show how smart I am.
I will keep him honest. Keep going then. So, folks, here's the thing. We've got to go to break. But if you're thinking about customer acquisition costs, and if there was a takeaway as we go into the break, it's by product, solution, or channel, understanding what the cost is to acquire a customer. With that in hand, you can now make allocation decisions, people, money, and time. So as a sales leader, that would be one of the first things that I would do, is to understand that. So we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk about taking this concept of customer acquisition costs and lifetime value, how you sort of understand where you are in the revenue growth maturity model and what that means to making your number. Stick around.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back. I'm George Delos Reyes, and I'm joined by my colleague Matt Shears. We've been talking about how to increase the probability of making your revenue goals through strategic alignment. We've discussed quite a bit today, and if you would like more help with these concepts, you can request for one of our experts to come to you. Just go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-workshop. So, back to the subject at hand. Matt, I believe it is the CEO's responsibility to drive alignment through the organization. It starts at the top and cascades down. Now, on a recent podcast, our CEO, Greg Alexander, interviewed Joe Trammell, the CEO of Chorus. They discussed the topic of a CEO's role in driving alignment. And let's listen into the conversation. I think it'd be informative.
When I read the book, what I loved about it was this concept of alignment. So, making sure that the strategy that the CEO develops, cascades all the way through the organization and becomes tangible to everybody, and everybody knows how they contribute to the organization, literally on a daily basis. And that creates the need for, some type of system that allows for alignment to be maintained.
I'd say there's kind of two fundamental parts. There's the idea of aligning everyone and letting them, directly see how their contribution contributes to the strategy of the whole company. And then secondly, for a CEO to gather data from everywhere in the organization about what's going on in an unfiltered and transparent way as possible. And so you put those two pieces together, and it kind of forms the basis of a management or an executional structure for the company. And kind of one of the fundamental roles of the CEO, like captain of a ship, is to look out over the horizon as far as he can see and avoid the icebergs. And so what we've done with Chorus is we've asked every individual in the company, every knowledge worker in the company, make a prediction about what's going to occur. So now instead of just having a sales forecast, we've got a forecast in every group in the organization.
So from the conversation, Matt, it's clear that Joel understood his role in driving alignment and how to do it. Matt, if I'm a CEO listening today, how do I know where I stand on the strategic alignment spectrum? How do I identify my gaps?
Yeah. Well, George, what the market told us, the research that we did, we have put into what we call the revenue growth maturity model. Mm-hmm. And it's displayed on the screen right now, and there's really 5 levels. So I'll just start by describing each one, and then we can talk a little bit about what you might find and how you might plot yourself inside one of those.
Right.
So level 1 is what we call chaos. And
don't want to be there.
Well, no, you don't, but unfortunately, some organizations reside there.
Hi.
Yes.
I'm in chaos.
Yes, not a great place to be. So in something like chaos, you have a corporate strategy, so it does exist, maybe not, no functional strategies. So it's ill-defined.
Shooting from the hip.
Yeah, the company really doesn't understand, the rest of the company doesn't really understand the corporate strategy. Right. And there is no harmony between the functional leaders, product, marketing, and sales.
That doesn't sound very scalable.
Well, it's not, and if you're making the number in a place that's in level 1, you're literally doing it on the backs of a few outstanding individual performers. It's not replicatable, And the most frustrating part is you can't attribute any sort of success to something you're doing because you're literally operating in the tyranny of the urgent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about level 2?
So level 2, we're starting to make some progress, right? So now we're defined. And in defined, you have a corporate strategy and you have functional strategies. But the problem with the functional strategies and in the level 2 organizations, it's a moment in time. The annual planning process, I scurry around in October and November, I write a bunch of stuff, I position for headcount, I ask for budget, I fight for my initiatives, and then I take my strategy, I stick it on a shelf.
Until next year.
Yeah, and I leave it there and I quote, get back to work now that I've gotten through that whole process.
It's a painful process. We see a lot of sales marketing leaders, go dark.
Yes.
For whatever, those 4-6 weeks to produce their strategy. And unfortunately, like you said, it literally goes on the shelf. It doesn't drive action.
No. So challenging there. But as you think about it, this show is about increasing the probability of success. The first thing it starts with is setting a baseline. You've got to understand where you are.
Absolutely.
I've been there. We've dealt with it. You got to understand it. So moving along in the spectrum is level 3. Level 3, we're now getting to the point where I'm implemented. So I've got a strategy from the corporate perspective. I've got functional strategies. My functional strategies are cascaded down through my staff. So sales is executing, marketing is executing, product is executing. The problem? Doing it in silos.
So an example of a level 3 would be, marketing out there, generating, campaigns according to their strategy, but it's not pointed in the right market.
Correct.
And sales is sitting there, hey, you're giving me crappy leads.
Correct.
Or why are you generating leads over here when I'm trying to sell over there? Kind of
Correct.
thing like that. Or product, is launching things without anybody really knowing what's coming out of the product team, right? Okay.
So
got it.
13% of the organizations that we looked at in this year's research resided in level 3. Now, the good news about level 3 is you can get from 3 to 4 just by getting yourself internally aligned, which is the move we're going to talk about right now, because level 4 is called managed. Because when you're managed, you've got a corporate strategy, you've got functional strategies, you're driving them, and you're internally aligned. Your product, I'm marketing, we're talking. I'm sales, you're talent, we're talking. You're the CEO, I'm marketing, we're talking. We've got an operating rhythm, right? We're comparing notes. These are good organizations. So for those watching, being level 4 is not an indictment, it's quite the opposite. You truly are operating at a high level, top 15%.
Yeah.
Your probability of making the number, much greater than those levels 1 through 3.
Just thinking through it, the effort to remain in alignment with your cross-functional partner.
Correct.
It's I don't want to say it's daunting, but it takes effort, right? It takes a regular cadence of communication. What does that cadence look like?
Yeah, typically what we'll see is be 3 types, right? There'd be a weekly cadence where if you're product and I'm marketing, we're talking weekly, new things we're finding, what we're noticing in the marketplace, what I owe you, what you owe me. Monthly, we're sitting down together as a team, functional leaders. We're reviewing a single dashboard, if you will, that intersects our goals. Your goals in product, my goals in marketing, the sales leader's goals if he's in the room, making sure that the 3 to 5 things that really matter, we're talking about them, and there's these points of intersection between them. And then quarterly, we have quarterly business reviews. The difference with the quarterly business reviews and top performing organizations, it's not the QBRs that a lot of people have where you talk about what happened and then it's kind of go away. Talk about what happened. Take a look at the assumptions that you had and how you tested those assumptions, new information that inform you, and then you make changes to your strategies on the spot.
It's a great way to look at it. It's not just a look in the rear mirror.
No.
You're actually looking ahead and say, okay, we've been misaligned here and here and here.
Correct.
The market is saying this. How are we going to pivot? How are we going to maintain that alignment?
Correct.
Great stuff. So Matt, we put out our research report in 2016.
Yep.
It's exhaustive to say the least.
Yes.
It's really thick here, right? And what I like about it is it helps a CEO and his executive team really go through the process of plotting themselves on the revenue growth maturity model. So if I was a CEO and I was handed this research report, how would I go about using it?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would do after I read the executive summary and sort of got the tips of the waves.
It's worth even going into the rest of the 200 pages. Yeah.
That's right. So assuming that you captivated my interest, right, and my goal to be at level 5, which is predictable, right, which is where I've got a strategy, my functional leaders have strategies, and we're aligned internally and externally. So if that's my aspiration, what I would do, I would take this and I might turn to, let's say, page 51, which is the corporate strategy section, And in that, I would take a look at the 8 steps and recognize that the dependencies that I have in ensuring that I've answered all of the questions in the 8-step corporate strategy methodology, because if you're the product leader, George, I owe that to you. You need to know our advantages. You need to know our competition, the markets we compete in, so you can build the right products.
Yeah, how about like step number 4, brand?
Yeah.
You know, the CEO really, and this is what's interesting is that the CEO owns, you know, in his corporate strategy, what's our brand?
Yes.
Right? And then marketing can go off and operationalize it, right? But he owns saying, hey, how are we going to serve our customers differently than our competition?
Correct.
All right, gotcha.
So that would be one example. You know, take another one. You know, go to page 157.
You know these pages by heart, Matt.
Well, I had a lot of studying as I was waiting for you. So, you know,
you knew I was going to pepper you.
Yeah,
with
I'm a quick learner.
There you go.
So,
what are we looking at on page 157?
Well, you're looking at the 5-step sales strategy methodology.
Okay.
So how I might use this if I was a CEO is I would sit down with my sales leader and we would talk about step 1 planning, which says I'm going to develop sales and data plans that's going to allow the organization to make the number. Well, I've informed you by the advantages, the markets we are going into, our competition. You now can build a revenue plan, a budget plan, and a data plan that would reflect that. But the healthy back and forth, because I've equipped you with the right tools, allows us to have a productive discussion.
You know, what's interesting, again, you know, strategy is about the allocation of your people, your time, and your, and your money, right? As a sales leader, being informed by the corporate strategy, as you mentioned, you know, I can now go about my planning exercise. You know, where am I going? How am I going to hit the revenue number that I've been given?
Yeah,
right?
No doubt.
And now I know. Because I know where I need to be playing in, what markets, what the competitors are, et cetera.
Yep. So let's have a listen to Chris Giglio, the CEO of Adderant, take us through the process that he goes through to arm his functional leaders with all they need to build great functional strategies as he interfaces with our CEO, Greg Alexander.
We spend a lot of time pushing our product management organization into sales calls, but into the field. We've created a forum for clients and prospects to give us feedback on what we think we have right, and most importantly, to share with us what their big challenges are. We've identified new product solutions that we've been able to bring to market, and we've, as I said, modified some of the things that we thought were right. And our big bet was to make a deal really, really large, and as a result, it was hard for clients to buy it. And so we've taken some of our great solutions and made them easy to handle as standalones, and we're attacking the market differently. And the sales leaders find they'll have better success on a high volume of smaller deals based on the way clients want to buy today. And I think that's unlocking good growth for us. But it begins, I think, with making sure, and this is the rest of the organization, services and support, get direct client feedback on what it feels like to work with us. And for a small company like ours that's growing, we want to make sure that we are an easy company to do business with. And that's not just the sales organization's challenge. It goes across the rest of the org.
So there you have it. The words of a CEO trying to live in the strategies and arm his team so that his team can improve the probability of making the revenue growth number, because it's not just a sales thing or just a marketing thing. Every function owns it. And that's how Chris is marching his team through to outgrow the peers in their market segments.
Well, Matt, unfortunately, that brings us to the end of another episode. We would like to thank you, our audience, for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this show, I suggest you subscribe to SBI TV at salesbenchmarkindex.com/TV, or you can find us at our SBI YouTube channel. We have some outstanding guests confirmed for future episodes that you're not going to want to miss. So until then, Matt and I wish you the best of luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.